So it's not just Tenant.io. I'll be talking a little bit about our tool suite as well. So a little suite of tools that you'll get out of this presentation, and a lot of it, hopefully, you're already using. So first off, a little bit about us. So we are a web agency. We have been doing it for I don't know how many years now. You lose count, don't you? But we're essentially a team of web specialists. It's not just Joomla. We also do a lot of WordPress stuff and also Laravel as well. So we try and make all of our applications, websites, as accessible as possible. Now, just as a disclaimer, I am no way affiliated with Tenant.io. I just like using their API and their platform to do a lot of our testing because it's got a lot of cool little things in it. All right. So my presentation is mainly around the problem that we have when we onboard new developers into the company. So a lot of them that we pick up, we work with a lot of developers overseas, and accessibility is completely unknown. It's usually not taught at all in any education system in Asia, and we have a Philippines office where we have a lot of our developers. They have absolutely no idea about accessibility at all. But it's getting better, and we try and improve their code, and our developers here in Sydney as well, try and improve their code by standardizing our output with boilerplates, design patterns, and a whole bunch of tools that we put together to help speed up the process. And face it, we're lazy. We don't want to be reusing, rewriting code if we don't need to. So if the code already exists, if there's boilerplates, tools out there, let's use them. So I'll go through a little bit about our accessibility toolbox and a couple of things that we have in it. Maybe you can take some things away and add them to your toolbox yourself. So first off, I mentioned the boilerplates that we have. So a lot of them that we use for WordPress and Laravel. We have some plugins that we add into our websites as well, such as Gravity Forms accessibility plugin, as well as a whole bunch of HTML sniffers that we use. The one that we like to use is from Squiz. I used to work with MySource Matrix back in the day, so I guess I was a little bit of a fan. And of course, Tenant.io. And I'll have a whole bunch of demos that I'll be doing with Tenant.io. But thankfully, I've done my sacrifices to the demo gods. I've recorded a whole bunch of demos, and I have backups of those demos. So if they don't play, I have backups of the backups. So it's all good. We'll be fine, right? And if we have time, we'll go through some extra demos as well. So, if you want to see something else with Tenant.io that I haven't demonstrated but I've mentioned, just let me know. Last but not least, access monitors and monitoring software. So once you launch a website, you can actually see if the website is still accessible after several months. Because we all know clients do as they're told, right? And when you put a website out there, it remains accessible. They don't put in huge images and mark up their content incorrectly. That never happens. Or does it? And we have also a lot of automated scripts that we use as well. And if we have time, we'll go through those too. So first off, a boilerplate. So one of our guys in the Philippines actually made a huge boilerplate generator for us. It has a whole bunch of semantic markup, so we don't need to redo anything there. It has a base level CSS that's all accessible. It has the font sizes all standardized for us, contrast, padding, focus state, so everything's done. So if each time we build a brand new website, even though the client isn't asking for any of this level of accessibility, all this stuff is baked into it. Baking's the theme for the conference, I think. So yeah, so everything's baked into it. So we've got the ARIA landmarks, menus are all marked up correctly, skip menus, etc., etc. So that's a huge step for us to make anything else that we build accessible. And we're just building and adding onto that over time. So mainly we use Bootstrap. We also have one in Foundation as well. So, if you're using those front-end frameworks to build websites, we have GitHub repositories. We have to clean them up, but if anyone's interested in them, just let me know and I'll put them up online somewhere and you can just start using them yourself as well. Now, I mentioned a little bit before, we do a lot of work in WordPress. So if anyone's using forms on their website, I think everyone uses a form on the website. You build a website to generate leads. Is that correct? So one of the form builders that we like to use is Gravity Forms. And Gravity Forms by default isn't accessible. It spits out some pretty average code. So we found this extra plugin called, it's a mouthful, WCAG 2.0 Form Fields for Gravity Forms. You can get to that at the address there, wordpress.org/plugins/gravity-forms-20-form-fields. And this plugin is absolutely fantastic. It does a whole lot of things that would have to recode the entire plugin and work from the framework. But in this previous screen, you can see it has a form stepper. So you can see your progress through the form. So it has all those little elements into it. You can also see the errors that appear on when you're submitting a form. So it consolidates all the errors on top of the form field and has anchor links to those actual input elements that may have incorrect errors that are being displayed to the user. Also creates field sets for radio fields and adds in ARIA attributes where needed as well. So it's absolutely fantastic. It's free. You might as well use it if you're using Gravity Forms. The next little tool that we use, I mentioned code sniffers. Now there's a whole bunch of these out there. These have been around since the early days of the web. Another one that we use is called Waves. Is there anything else that people use? No one uses any. All right, cool. Didn't get any response. So this one here is from Squiz, like I mentioned. It's a quick, easy tool. You install it onto your bookmark bar of your browser. It's easy to use. It gives a little bit of false positives though. So it tests basically anything that it can find on the screen. And some of them you will need to interpret, and it will take some experience in interpreting those issues to find out if they're actually true or not. Now, this is my first video demo. Hopefully it works. So I'm testing the amazon.com.au website because, of course, it's very popular. It should be accessible, right? Right? So let's hopefully this demo works. Is it working? Oh, great. I can't see here. Okay. So I've clicked the testing tool. Now it's going through and seeing how many errors there are. And we can see there's 108 errors. I've gone through and now I'm stepping through the list of errors. There's 28 pages of errors there. So I'm just having a look at what they are. My God. A lot of warnings here. So yellow ones indicate that they're warnings. And then I'm clicking on one of them in particular, which is text input box. And I like this tool in particular because it highlights where it is. So at the moment on the screen, it's highlighting that main search input box and telling me there's something wrong with it. There's a bit of code there. For a developer that doesn't know any accessibility, it's also giving me the possible solution as well and why it's not meeting requirements. So now I have to go back and actually interpret that and find out what's wrong with it and actually do the fixes that way. The next tool I like to use, and which I'll be demoing a little bit later, is the Standardising platform. So this one's fantastic. It's quick and easy to use. It's API driven, so it has a full API. So if you're used to working with APIs, Standardising is fantastic. It only tests what they believe machines should be testing. So if there's, like the code sniffer would bring up a lot of errors that need certain levels of interpretation, whereas Standardising would not test all those particular elements and only test things that it knows is problems, such as a anchor link with the words "click here." So it will look for those particular elements and say that it's failing against those. It's also a great tool because it's API driven. You can automate that process and use Standardising in your build of your websites or your applications. So during the build process, you can flag that this particular build that you're releasing has X amount of errors, and you can stop the build process there and it won't deploy to a production server. Okay, the next tool that I'm going to show here quickly is the Access Monitor, and I've got a demo of this one as well. You can get to this one at wordpress.org/plugin/access-monitor. And this is one of the tools that we use on our WordPress websites after we launch something. So this tool allows us to schedule tests within the website as well. It does little reports for us, which is fantastic. And it can also stop publishers from publishing a page that don't meet the test requirements. So it's a really good stopping point for publishers to make sure their content is always accessible as they're pushing stuff online. Okay, so that's our tool suite. Our developers are using that. That's great. But when are they using it? Hopefully they're testing a lot, and we'll go through a little bit of this right now. So back in the day, hopefully back in the day, we're doing a lot of milestone testing with a waterfall development lifecycle. So we'll be designing a website, taking it through development process, and right at the very end, we're testing the website for accessibility issues just before we're launching. So we have a very narrow period of time and very stressed developers that need to get code out. So hopefully we're not testing right at the end, and we're baking testing into the whole development lifecycle process. I'm hoping most people have moved to a more agile development process where they're deploying code on a shorter basis and testing more often. So I highly encourage people to test early and test often to make sure that they nip these accessibility issues early on. Do most people test often as they go through an agile process? Can I see a show of hands? About half the room. Fantastic. Good. I'm preaching to the converted already. So our developers are getting better. We still don't know everything. I honestly don't know everything either, but with all these tools, we're getting better and we're standardizing our builds. So testing with Tenon.io. Let's get to all the juicy bits. So first off, I'll demonstrate the web page tester. Who's actually used Tenon? 2, 3, maybe 4 people, 5, 6 people in the room. Okay, great. Okay, so we got the web page tester, which will show us a whole bunch of easy ways to test online using their online tester. I'll go through the API triggers as well, so we can start testing specific pages from the API. And then the Tenon CLI tool, which is a pretty cool tool to generate reports from. And then last but not least, their monitoring tools that you can set up within the dashboard. Okay, so the first thing here, I think this is a video. I really can't tell from these slides. Okay, okay, so the video is starting. Now I'm just going to test the A11y Camp website, the schedule. So, schedules, tables, there must be some issues here. So I'm putting in the URL, the thing's thinking, and no issues. Oh, well, that was pretty boring, wasn't it? But what we see here is an overview of how many issues there are in the website. This one's none. It's passed all the 74 tests that Tenon's testing for. So now I'm testing something else, google.com. This should be good as well. Oh, actually, no. We have, how many errors there? I can't see on the screen. Is that 6? All right, 6. And then in that report, it will give us snippets of the code and suggestions of why this is failing and what you might need to fix around it. So I wish it was playing here because I can't see at all. I need glasses to see that. So I think the button element, there's something wrong with it. So it's missing some text there. So it gives you all these prompts and things that you need to change. I think that's the end of that video. So that's a quick, easy way to use Tenon, especially if you don't know how to use APIs. If you're just signing up to Tenon and you're passing URLs to it, it'll give you those nice, lovely reports at the end. Now, if you are a developer and you do like playing with the APIs, what I'll demonstrate here is how to use it with a thing called Postman. If you haven't used Postman before, Postman's a fantastic tool to test API endpoints and pass data to those endpoints. So I'll just press play. Yeah, okay, great. So I've got the endpoint up there, the tenon.io/API, and I've got my API key for everyone to use. So I'm passing my key, and I'm also passing a URL for someone to test against as well. So they're the 2 required fields that you need to pass. So I'll hit send. Any second now. There we go. And now it's being sent off to Tenon, and it gives me a JSON response back. So this is the default response that it gives back. For an untrained eye, it looks very confusing, but I'll just highlight some of the JSON response here so it makes more sense to you. So this is what we're looking for here. At the top, I can't see what that is. Issues. So it gives you a quick summary of how many issues it's found on the page. So there's 2 issues there. And I can't see what that one says. Total issues, thank you. And then we go down a little bit further. It breaks down those issues into the A, AA, AAA. So we can build nice reports from this, just as Tenon.io did. And then at the very last one there, we can see the total of tests failed or tests performed, passing. So that's the, what do you call it, the API in a nutshell. And there's a whole, oh, I stopped that one a little bit too early, I think. It's okay. The API documentation for that is quite detailed in regards to what you can pass as endpoints. So another 2 variables that you can test with the API is the viewport. So that's to allow you to test whether it meets and passes on responsive screens. So you may have some issues there, and you can pass all that over via the API to test it on a smaller screen or a larger screen to see if there's any errors at that point as well. So it's a really cool way of doing it. So this one here, I'll move on to the CLI tool. Now, I might just segue back and talk about some other tools that Tenon.io have. And one of the really cool ones, which I couldn't set up for this demonstration, is the integration with GitHub issues. So when you're running these reports, you're doing something in the Tenon CLI and it's generating all these errors. You can automatically push all of those errors to the issues bucket within GitHub, which is a fantastic way just to dump all the stuff onto the developers. Maybe not dump, but pass on nicely in an automated way that Tenon.io sets up for you, so that the developers have a nice list of issues that they have to go through and fix. So there's a repo for that. If you talk to me afterwards, I'll get you the link to that. But I think it's all on github.com/Tenon.io or Tenon. So this one here, I'll demonstrate the CLI. Now this one here, the screen, the font size might be a little bit small, but I'll just press play. Come on, is it playing? Yeah, all right, cool. So this is a test Laravel application that I just set up. And I'm going to the console now of that application. And I'm running a CLI tool. So I've got this Tenon CLI, a configuration file that you have to set up for it. It contains your API keys and your config that you want to test against. A folder of where you want to actually output the reports. So by default, you can output to HTML, but you can also do JSON, so you can parse that data. And then also the page that I want to test as well. In this case, it's the login page that we just saw before. So I submitted that to Tenon.io. It's doing its thing, and it's generated the report for me. So I can do that multiple times and test a whole lot of pages automatically. I can do that part of my build script and build a massive library of reports that I can give to developers, management, etc. So this is one of the reports. It hasn't been formatted perfectly, but it's essentially telling me what's wrong with that login page, just as you saw with those other Tenon.io reports. And what am I doing now? I can't remember this part of the video. Oh, I'm comparing this to the code sniffer. So the Tenon.io only gave me 2 errors, but the code sniffer here from Squiz is giving me 9 errors. I'm just going to do a quick step through of that to compare the 2 error reports. And here it's telling me I've got contrast issues. Going through, more contrast issues, great. And the next one, contrast issues, okay, more contrast issues, yeah, okay, contrast. The whole menu's got contrast issues, obviously. Contrast issues. Okay, I think I get it. I've got contrast issues on the website. Let's skip that. Okay, so that's a comparison with the CLI tool, Tenon.io and Squiz. So this next bit here, is anyone building accessible WordPress websites? Can I show of hands? One, very small, 7, 8. Okay, cool. So Access Monitor, like I said, is a cool tool that you can put into your website so that you can generate reports and you can schedule these reports to make sure that your client's websites are still accessible. I don't know if you can see there, but that's, why isn't this, ah, no, what have I done? I was playing around with it before I could actually draw on the screen, but I've stuffed it up now. That's all right. In the bottom there, in those options, you can see the scheduling options and the amount of URLs. So this one, I'm just doing a report for a particular page of a website. So I'll just step through to the demo now and press play. Is it going? Yep, cool. Now there's a bit of a setup process with this. It's a little bit annoying, but once you've set it up, it's all fine. You can keep going and generate reports automatically. So I'm just going through, I'm putting in the URL that I need to test with, and I'm looking at the default configuration. Default configuration is usually just fine. Now it's missing a project ID there, and that's because with Tenant.io you need to set up specific project buckets, essentially. So I'm going back into the Tenant.io dashboard. I'm setting up a new project for this. So I'm just typing the details. Majority of the videos I do, I speed them up so you don't have to watch me type. I forgot this one, sorry. Like I said, we can use the default options. That one there, I said don't test URLs, the one that I clicked off. Hit save, my bucket's created. Now I'm just going to copy the project ID. Yep. And add it into my reports. And then I click that save button. That's important, so it saves these reports into Tenant.io. And I can generate, come on. Oh, it's doing it. Once again, I didn't speed it up. Slow website. Come on, I want to see the report. If you're on a good server, it's usually really fast. Yeah, all right, great. So now it's spit back all of these issues that now I can step through the page and go through and fix. Gives me the source, where it is, and there's a lot of errors, a lot of things to fix up there. So I can actually go to the page as well. I think I did speed up this part. Come on, scroll down. And that little shortcut overlays the errors that you get from Tenant.io onto the website. And now you can see a list of all those errors, its priority, how to fix it, where it is on the site, in comparison to the actual page itself. Cool. Okay, next thing. So this one here is the Tenant.io monitors. So it's another little feature that they have in regards to monitoring what changes on a website. So again, I need to create a new bucket, project bucket for this one, and I called it My Beanstalk Automated Tests. So as you can see there, it's got nothing in there at the moment, no tests set up at all. So I'll just step through this, and now I have to set up a monitor. So you go to Profiles, set up a new monitor. There we go, sped up, nice, fast, great. So now I have to grab the key here, the site key, and a bit of JavaScript. Now this JavaScript goes in the footer area of your website. And what it does is actually tracks to see if there's any changes on the site. So over a period of time, if there's content updates or new menus or something added, the JavaScript will actually detect, compare and what you had previously with what you have now, and make those changes and run another test to see if that page actually passes still. So I'm just changing the key for the site. I can't see that. That's the hash from. So hash from is the actual div that div container that I'm tracking changes in. So in this case, I'm tracking the content container, and the interval is the period of time that we're testing changes from. So that was set to a week just before, but I just deleted it now so I could actually do this test and repeat the test quickly for the demo purposes. So now I'm just making a quick change in the code. I usually never do code demos. Absolutely hate them. No one can ever see the code, especially when I'm doing it live in a terminal. So I'm putting in 2 H1 tags. That should be bad. And just close it. Should be faster. Save, great. Okay, so I'll refresh the page. Now tenant.io would actually see those changes when a visitor actually visits the page. So I can see it's still set as 0, so no test, nothing's been tested yet. I go to the page, refresh it, wrong title, great, H1. Another title at the top. I'll click on to the login button, forgot password page, so 2 pages have been generated, so it should be doing at least 2 tests. So go back to the tenant.io dashboard, and I can see there are 2 tests being queued, and the errors are starting to pile up now. So I've got 1 error, and then with the magic of video editing, or not yet, I got up to 2, come on. So still got 2, yeah, there we go. And the errors are starting to pile up on the page. So now I can see that there's some issues with that. Now in the actual report of that bucket, I can filter errors over a period of time. So if the automated tests are done on a particular date, I fixed them all, fantastic. In the future or whatever, if I'm doing comparison report to see what's changed, the errors coming up, I can filter those down and see actually what's happening. I'm just going through this now. I'm seeing what's being flagged from the platform, and it's name role value. So it's something to do with my input fields. Cool. So, all right, now putting that all together, I have a whole bunch of tools, testing it. To wrap things up, we have a generator, boilerplates. We've got plugins and stuff that we use that are available in the community, open source tools, so we stitch them all together. We'll implement the design from the team. We're using the code sniffers along the way to help us identify bits of code that are incorrect. We then have the, in the process of deploying a website, we push that code to Git, and that goes through our automated process of deploying it to a server. We use a deploy system called Buddy. Others might use Jenkins or something else. Buddy's just nice. Then after the deploy is successful, after all the automated tests, we deploy the code, but if it's not successful, then we loop through that process, change, update, do the tests again, and then push it out further. And last but not least, we generate the reports using the automated testing tools. So that's the process, that's the tools that we use, that's how we stitch it all together to make our websites accessible and make sure they stay accessible. And that's me in a nutshell, and the presentation in a nutshell. So you can follow me at Twitter at AstroBoySoup. Cool. That's it, thank you.